Welcome to the Nurturing Fathers Podcast, a show dedicated to helping men succeed at the most challenging and rewarding job they'll ever have, being a dad. Your hosts are Mark Perlman, the creator and founder of the Nurturing Fathers program, and his son, Corey Perlman, who facilitates the program at the Atlanta Federal Penitentiary and is also a father of 2 young children. It's time to add tools to your Nurturing Fathers toolbox. Mark and Corey, take it away.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Nurturing Fathers Program podcast. This is episode 2. Dad and I together again. How's it going, Dad?
It's going great. Glad to be here.
We got the first one under our belt.
Amazing.
Yeah, you did a good job, buddy.
Thanks. This is very new to me, old podcast. Talking is not new to me at all. But
So the first one was kind of just setting the stage a little bit, I would say, and kind of creating a little bit of background to where we were going. And this one is really to start diving into, some of the most important aspects of being a nurturing father and the Nurturing Fathers program in itself. I love this portion of the Nurturing Fathers program because it helps dads kind of go back and think about sort of and unravel and unpack some of the stuff that made them who they are, both as men as well as dads.
Right.
So this whole thing is going to be about our dads. So let me just start by asking you to tell me, as part of the Nurturing Fathers program, why you felt, especially in the beginning, it was so important for us as men and as dads to look back at our history with our fathers, either present or not present, and why that's so important in the way we parent today.
one of the things I learned early on, both professionally and trying to be a good father, making that personal study of what I need to do, is that we tend to parent the way we were parented. That parenting is a learned behavior, and basically the school, I won't call it the school of hard knocks, but it is for some, but the school of parenting is really the home that we grew up in, and who our mom was, who our dad was, what are those male and female influences that were father and mother. And it's a deeper learning than just intellectual learning or head learning. It's a learning that goes into ourselves and that we tend to repeat what was done to us, what was said to us. To give you an example, when I was parenting your brother, my first child, 6 years older than Corey sitting here, I found myself saying certain things that I said I would never want to say to my kids, but when a glass of juice fell for the second or third time, boom, that phrase was out there on the table. It was like, holy cow, this is on automatic pilot. Well, it's not on automatic pilot. There's a tendency to parent or father the way we were fathered. So it's important, in my mind, to look back and take a sober and clear look. Who was that man who was a father or father figure to us? And we don't want to exaggerate his goodness. We don't want to, rag on him and say all the worst kind. It's not about that. It's saying an objective view. What were his strengths? What were his weaknesses? This is the place I started. This is the foundation. And in a certain sense, it's honoring him and honoring that relationship to say that this is where fathering started for me. And this is a focal point that I want to go back to and take a good look, honest look at what kind of man and what kind of father was he.
Yeah, and I think that what this really underscores for me when we do this is a lot of the men, especially in the prison, obviously, grew up without a dad, either a completely absent father or just an uninterested father or whatever the case may be. And they don't want to go back there. And they kind of had this sort of defense mechanism up as I didn't need him. My mom was an amazing human being and doubled up for me, and I'm fine. And where we get to, the truth is you're not fine. And you did a great job, and she did a great job. But there's definitely some voids there. There's some wounds.
Yeah, not only voids, but wounds. There's scar tissue.
Scar tissue.
For the less than adequate or abusive or whatever that type of father was, there's scar tissue. And I don't think that heals and goes away by itself. It needs our light and attention to help to integrate it and to help to heal it. And I think part of this, it's not therapy. It's just basically coming to terms clearly and openly with who our fathers were. This part of the program, Corey, we called Fathering History.
Yes.
His story, history. Every father has a history, and every father's history is different. So I want to look at the best he had to offer, the worst he had to offer. And the beautiful part of it is like, I am empowered, and each of you are empowered to pick and choose who and what we want to take forward. So this is part of our script that is called our mission. What kind of father do I want to be? And it's beginning of the vision statement that goes right through the 13-week program. We'll talk about it as a thread throughout this entire series of podcasts. What am I going for? What is my ideal picture of who I might become as a father? And this is one important piece of it. Where have I come from? And I want to take the best that he had to offer and replicate that. I want to take the worst he had to offer and just leave it aside, put it aside, and then I'm going to add some new things of my own.
Yeah, you have a great comic strip or cartoon in the book where it's got two men, I guess, I don't know if it's meant to be a dad and a son, or in a garage with a bunch of boxes. And it basically says exactly that. He says, I'm going to throw some of this away.
I'm going to look through some of the stuff my father left
me. I'm going to throw some of it away. I'm going to keep some of it. And I'm actually going to create some of my own. So there's those three areas. And I think that's a really good call to action for those of you listening today as you think back and reflect on your history, the experience that you had with your father. What did you like that he did as a dad and that you either replicate or would like to replicate? What didn't you like? What did he do that didn't work so well? What was not nurturing? What was, fearful? What, really made you upset or frustrated by the way he parented? And then what was he just didn't do? What are some things that you want to do or do that your father never did? And that's creating the new.
Yeah. And what I would like to take a moment to do, if Corey's up for it, is ask you that question as we do in the program. Would you be willing to describe me, the father you had from your perspective? What are the things that you are, valued and would like to bring forward? And what are some of the things that maybe not? But could you talk about that for a minute?
No way.
Talk about putting someone on the spot.
Yeah, can you go into the bathroom for a minute? Why will me and the folks talk here for a second?
Destroy my whole reputation.
Yeah, I would definitely talk about that. I mean, I think that using that scenario of what I would do, so very involved, I think about a story that touched my heart from a guy that was sitting in my class about, him being at a baseball game and having the game of his life and just kept looking up in the stands, and that seat was empty. You've heard that song so many times. And well, my seat wasn't empty. You were always there. I know you create a lot of stress and probably lost some years off your life on my tennis matches that took you to the brink and back. But you were there, throughout. We always make the joke that being a present dad, half the battle's just showing up.
It is.
So you showed up, which was great. And yeah, I remember that in a very, very positive way that, you were there and very involved. And, you and Mom went through a divorce when I was 7 years old. So there was definitely some scarring and some very difficult years there, being that we weren't, the kind of quote unquote perfect family and had a lot to go through and had a lot of anger through that part. But, one of the things that you did a great job of back then, I even remember it, is the difficult conversations, the communication. Nothing went unsaid. That's one thing that I can definitely say as a son to you is that, we talked a lot, and we do make the joke that there were times where I'd say, Dad, just hit me. I'm so tired of talking. Just get it out, get it out of the way. It's not exactly how it works. I don't think you want the alternative there, but we would talk through it, and the good, the bad, and the ugly. And so you were always, ready to talk about the difficult conversations and not just, push things under the rug. And I've noticed as being a dad that there are moments where you're just like, I kind of wouldn't mind just avoiding that topic. I don't want to talk to Talia about boys and, about certain things like that. And, it reminds me with you, it's like, no, have those conversations, make sure that you do talk about them. And then, I'd say the other, major thing that I think about with my parenting is, you had definitely taken physical discipline to the minimum, the absolute minimum. Maybe you smacked me, I probably remember 2 or 3, maybe 4 or 5 occasions in my life, and those are the moments. And I talked to my dads in class a lot about this. Those were the holy moments, like when I'm joking around and stepped out on the curb on the front of the street, or I locked myself, or locked Dad out of the bathroom with water running in the bathtub, or something that was just, serious enough to be like, this is it. This is the culmination of the worst you can do. And at that moment, at that point, maybe you felt it warranted a little smack on the butt or whatever.
We're all going to drown in this.
Yeah. I mean, we can talk about, but that was what I did learn is, and I would even say that wasn't the end of the spectrum. I mean, it was probably beyond the spectrum for you, but that definitely was at the end of the spectrum. Whereas, a lot of, I think, dads and moms parent with that, putting our hands can be somewhere in the middle of the spectrum of discipline. And that's where it comes up quite a bit. So I grew up not feeling the fear of you or your hands or anything like that. And I think there was a safety in that. There was, a confidence in that. So I think that was really important. You did a great job with your words and positive reinforcement. You can never say, I love you enough to your kids, and you never stopped saying I love you to me as a kid to this day.
And one of the things I hear most often from the fathers of today and some of the fathers of my generation is they never heard those words from their father.
No.
And when it comes to the question, what would you have most liked to hear? What could have been the most nurturing message? It's as simple as I love you, son.
Yeah.
Or I'm proud of you.
Yeah.
And why, I guess fathers, we're going to have a whole podcast on feelings, but just to kind of underscore that for a moment here, there was a sense in the old days that a father should not or was not appropriate to express that tenderness. Well, nurturing, the tender aspect is fully in our court now. So our children today, and I watch Corey with his children, the I love yous. Corey and I never end a telephone conversation. Yeah. We don't live in the same state, so we talk on phone. We never end a conversation with he or his brother that doesn't say I love you. And it's meaningful. It's meaningful, and I would not forget it because it's that important. And it brings to mind, I just want to say something about Corey as a father too. There's a picture on my desk in my office about he and his daughter, and they're going to the daddy-daughter dance. So he's dressed up in his suit. She's dressed up like a 7-year-old little young lady. And I watch how comfortable she is with her body against his sideways. And she's got her little hand on his stomach, and she's got her head rested against his side. And as I look up to that picture, I think of all these beautiful things that are being expressed. But the one that strikes me most is how comfortable she is with her daddy. How absolutely comfortable she is in his presence and by his side. And that's a beautiful thing for a father to achieve.
Yeah. I remember specifically both you and mom, being in the little crux of your arm there, just feeling very comfortable and comforted in that spot. You would always, let me sit there. There was never a barrier or a boundary between, our physical touch, obviously good physical touch, where I felt uncomfortable hugging my dad or being connected to you in that way. So that's not even something I'd really thought about until you just said that, but that definitely was passed down. The other thing I would say, we talk a lot about how dads can be better and improve upon. One thing we do really well is we play. We're really good at playing.
Yeah, we do.
And Dad and I played and played and played and played and played. And I always tell my guys this story because it has nothing to do with the size of your bank account. And a lot of times the guys will give me grief and say, well, your dad could take you to SeaWorld and your dad could take you this place, and Chuck E. Cheese. And I can't afford that. And I said, you know what? The memory I have most with my dad was sitting on our little hallway in your house and bouncing quarters into my dad's college mug all night long.
There's wood floors, so you could get a good bounce.
We would just
Now,
bounce.
my mug was filled with quarters. It was a collection of quarters. So yes, we would dump them out, put the mug by the door, and bounce them in. And at first, it was a competition to see who would win. We'd do it for hours. But then we evolved into this cooperative thing where we wanted to see what was the most number of quarters we could get in there and then break our past record.
And then trick shots.
Yeah.
I mean, you name it.
We also had that crazy little basketball ring.
Yeah.
And the Nerf ball.
What does that cost? $2.99 at Five Below or whatever. So the point is that dads, when in doubt, play. We're good at it. It comes naturally to us. I make the joke with Jess. She'll watch me play with the kids and she'll be like, why doesn't that work for me? And I'm like, well, the 87 things you do better than I do. The one thing I got going for me is I know how to wrestle and have fun and play games with them really, really well. So, and you did the same thing. And that builds so much of the bond, and just there's so much going on there that's under the surface of communication and fun and just, like I said, cutting through the boundaries and just feeling very safe and just, the pouring in of energy, of just positive love energy into each other with no money being exchanged.
Yeah.
You did take me to SeaWorld. You did take me to Disney World, but the moments I remember were the simple ones.
And the funny thing about it is the moments I remember from my own dad way, way, way back was Sunday afternoon, his and my time, take me across the park and throw some kind of ball back and forth. That's just it. Throw the ball back and forth. They were so memorable and so sweet. And it was just him and me. And I don't think my brother was born yet. And that's what I remember. I mean, he worked 10 hours a day, 6 days a week. But that's what I remember. There was no magic to it. It could not have been simpler or cheaper. But boy, was that a nice bonding time.
So let me bring it back for a second, Dad. I want to talk to you about something that comes up a lot with my guys. And I want to ask you about it. It's a real proud moment for when I talk to these guys about it. But the cycle, breaking the cycle. So dads were abused by their dads, absent dads, more likely to be absent dads, whatever the case may be. But these men that are in our program and had dads that had some really major parenting issues, what do you say, to them? How do you help them? How do we help them kind of get past and break that cycle of the negative that was their dad to them?
Well, as I have said, introducing this segment, you're right in the sweet spot of this segment, because we are not condemned to be the fathers that our fathers were. They have an influence. So the concern is real. If we don't think about it, there's a good chance we will be repeating it. Not absolutely, but a good chance. So this whole Nurturing Fathers program is based on a concept that is so simple called self-awareness. It's the blessing on self-awareness. Think about stuff. Think about stuff that's important. In this case, I want to be a good father. Well, okay, who was my father? What did he have to offer? Good, bad, and different. Now, if there was abuse, hitting and screaming, if there was absenteeism, there is nobody more aware than you of how that felt as a child. You carry that with you of how you felt as a child. So all we have to do is go back to the father, go back to you as a child and say, what is it you don't want to carry forth and why? And it's like, oh man, I remember those beatings. I never want my child to feel like they're waiting for the father to come. He promised to be here and nobody shows up. I know what that felt like. I don't want that. The beautiful message here, it is an empowerment model. We can become the fathers we choose to be, but we do it with some work. And part of that work is to go back, look at our own fathers and make those tough choices. Where the curriculum comes in and where our discussions come in on this podcast is there are tools and helpful hints that will make a difference and that we will share. But we do have the power to be the fathers we want to be.
It's really important to start here, I think, with your dads, because you made the point brilliantly. I just want to say it one more time, is that you are not condemned to be the dad that your dad was to you, especially if it was in the negative side. However, it's important for self-awareness. If you're not careful, you can be. You look at like Star Wars is a good kind of like sort of analogy for that, where Luke had the possibility of being the dad that his dad, he ended up bringing him back, obviously Darth Vader. But man, it's in us, right? Your dad is in you, whether you like it or not. Your dad is part of you, the good, the bad, and the ugly. And so it can come out if you're not careful. So super self-aware. And the thing that you do in the typical Nurturing Fathers program, which I think is great, is to bring a memento or something about your dad to the program, which harder for my guys to do when they're in the prison. So what I have my dads do, a little change that I did in the program, is I have them write a letter to their dad, whether they're deceased, alive, have a relationship or not, but everybody writes a letter. And I'll tell you guys, if it's something that you feel like doing, listening to this, whether your dad is here or not, just writing down what it meant to you for them to be your dad. Again, the good, the bad, and the ugly. Thank you for blank, 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 and blank. I wish you would have blank, 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 and blank. And when I am a dad, I'm a dad now. This is what I'm going to do because of my relationship with you, for good or for bad. And I thank you for it. And some of the dads say, you hit me, you hurt me, and I'm not going to do that to my kid. And thank you for reminding me of how harmful that is as a dad, whatever the case may be. But boy, I'll tell you something. When those dads read those letters in there, powerful. Not a dry eye in there.
Powerful. And if the dad is alive, you can choose to send it or not send it. If it's going to upset the apple cart, don't send it. It's just for you. It's for your growth.
That's right.
There are also always episodes in the Fathers program. Every time I sit with a group of 12, 14, 16 guys where one or two have been alienated, estranged, never met their father, and they decide with the support of the group to say, I'm going to give this a try, but based on honesty and who I am. And it's, you always go out there and say, be aware it may or may not take, depending on who he is and what his capabilities are. But we have some beautiful stories of reuniting, and a grandfather who's now part of the family and knows his own grandkids and stuff like that. There's tremendous healing that can happen both individually within us and within relationships based on these kinds of reflections. But most importantly, I want to underscore that this is one of the building blocks, one of the foundation stones, just one of many, of building the father that we want to become.
It's right at the time where we start to create that statement, our vision statement, the father I choose to be. Because it's a perfect time to do that.
Go hand in hand.
They go hand in hand. Yeah. And we talk about opening the father wound, and for some people it is a wound. And that letter can literally be the Band-Aid. But what we want as we come out of this chapter and we end this segment is once we kind of get in there, we dig in, and we really kind of sink our teeth into what our dads were like, then we dress it up.
Yeah.
We put the bandage on it if it needs to be a bandage on it, and we leave it alone and let it heal.
Right.
And we move on.
Right. And, there are many men who it's difficult to go back to do this for all sorts of reasons. We're not skilled at thinking this way. We're not encouraged to. There may be difficult memories. But if you see it through the eyes of the children, every father in those incarcerated settings, every father in the community, every father I've had contact with wants the best for their kids. They want their kids to turn out well. They want their kids to be healthy and happy. And this is one of the roads to ensuring that that happens, that we become the best dads that they can be. Because once they have that nurturing father, their chances of that kind of success, health and happiness increase exponentially.
So as we leave you in this particular segment, think about your dad. How was he as a dad? Was he there? Was he not there? Was he present? Was he there physically, but not really there?
How did you feel in his presence, literally, when he walked into the room?
Yeah.
Questions like, how did he discipline you? How did he show love? How did he treat mom? Because we're learning, the little kids who are watching this, and we were the kids back there, are learning how men act, how couples function. Your kids are learning by watching you how men act, how couples function. So we, being the best father we can be, gives our sons a model of being the best they can be, and gives our daughters, Corey, like your beautiful daughter, Talia, an example of how to expect to be treated by a man.
That's right.
That's role modeling. It's not what we say, it's who we are and what we do. So as we grow in these ways, our kids get the direct benefits from it.
That's right. I think about it every day. Every time I have an interaction with her mom, Talia is watching. I can promise you that. She is watching. You're absolutely right, man. Think about those questions and just remember, you can choose to take with you what you wanted from your dad, like I have. You can choose to leave some behind, some of the things that you didn't like. And of course, especially from this program, you're going to create anew things that you didn't know existed to be a part of being a nurturing dad that your dad just didn't know either, that you're going to be able to create a new relationship. And what's so cool, Dad, and what I love when I talk to my dads about it, when they didn't get it and there was this constant cycle of abuse or whatever it was, and they decided to change it. Think about all the generations to come after. They broke the cycle. I tell these guys, you want to have a little bit of pride in yourself? You just changed the next 15, 20, 30 generations of your family because of what you did.
Yep.
That's powerful.
It will carry forward.
Yeah.
So the ripple effects go beyond what we will perhaps ever know, but we can see it in our children, our families as they grow.
And they did the hard job. They broke the cycle. That was the hardest part. So I had it pretty easy. I have to give it to you. It's the only time I'm going to give you a slide, Dad, this one. All right. Well, tune in next time for another edition of the Nurturing Fathers podcast. Thank you for joining us. Please do chime in at the Facebook page, Nurturing Fathers.
Tell your brothers, friends, relatives.
Yeah.
This is a beautiful journey that we're on. One of the great, great journeys of a lifetime for us men.
That's right.
So good traveling with you.
Yep. We'll see you next time. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks for listening to the Nurturing Fathers podcast. Have questions or comments? Join the conversation at facebook.com/nurturingfathers or email us at nurturingfathers@gmail.com.